Hello, everyone. Welcome to Humans of STEMPeers and Addictive Brain Collaboration. Welcome to episode 2 of the series. Today we have Dr. Mayur Vadhvani from Germany joining us. Mayur completed his master's at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in India and moved to Göttingen for his Ph.D. He did his postdoc at Charité Medical University, focusing on autism and other brain disorders. Post that, he transitioned into biopharma strategy at Catenion as a consultant, where he supports clients with R&D strategy, assay evaluation, and much more. Today, we'll talk with Mayur about his journey from academics to industry, about his involvement with STEMPeers, and his work. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Mayur. And thank you for coming over today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
A pleasure as well. So let's start with your research career. Can you tell us more about your research as a PhD and a postdoc?
Yeah, so essentially, my PhD happened because of my interest in science. It's as simple as that, like for most of us, essentially. Yeah. And that I remember started gaining more and so it started increasing more and more while I was in bachelor's at University of Delhi in one of the colleges in South Campus. I got more and more interested in science. That led me into research at TIFR, doing my master's by research there. Okay. Had a wonderful time enjoying science. Decided to move on to the next phase of scientific life, which was then my PhD at the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen. There I focused essentially on neuroscience, and this is one of the topics I've been somehow associated entire research life.
Okay.
Very much enjoyed working on that. What I was doing back during my PhD was essentially looking at ubiquitin ligases and how the signaling using those ligases regulate the process development within neurons, so how the dendrites and axons are regulated.
Okay.
Try to understand some of the very basic development stuff, then moved on to postdoc, focusing on diseases. And there I again looked at factors in that are associated with autism spectrum disorder. So at the core, working as a neuroscientist, but a cellular and molecular biologist as well.
Okay.
So that's my research journey in a nutshell.
Okay. So what was the most critical finding during your PhD or postdoc?
I think a couple of them, but one that I particularly remember being really excited during my PhD is I was working on one of the novel E3 ubiquitin ligases.
Yeah.
It's called FPX31. Yeah. And I remember clearly developing a Western blot that particular day. And then it was the first time we ever discovered a substrate in context to the neuro.
Yeah.
In context to the brain or neuron signaling. And that is something that put a very big smile on my face that day. So yeah, that's something I clearly remember.
So as you said, Western blot, did you really enjoy doing Western blots?
I actually did.
Okay.
I mean, you also have to take into account it's not only Western, right? Be it any technique, any experiment that you follow up with. If you're looking at it for the first time, you are probably the first person amongst the 7 billion people to know about it. I think it's the luxury that you have as a scientist.
Yes. No, I asked this question because most of us don't like Western blots. And you know,
I did enjoy them when I was doing that back in the university.
Yeah. When I started doing Western blots, the first Western blot that I made was more enjoyable, but after that, a lot of failures happened. So I learned.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to move out of academia?
I never planned to become a faculty. It's just that I happened to stay in academia for quite some time. I was trying to move out after my PhD.
Yeah.
That somehow did not work out. Many reasons out there. Yeah. I did not find the right mentor. I did not know whom to approach.
Yeah.
There were no no career offices at the university at that time that would provide the right set of advices, etc.
Okay.
I wasn't networked to the right set of people as well. So I saw a lot of gaps there, and I decided I challenged myself. Essentially, moved into postdoc with all those big questions in mind,
Yeah.
and did tell myself that during the course of postdoc, I'm going to work on all those and try to figure out not only what my next transition step is going to be, but also to understand what I would like to do in long term.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, as we are speaking about transitioning, is it necessary to do a postdoc, post PhD to enter into academic industry?
It only depends on essentially what aspect of industry are you interested. When one says academia or industry, I don't think they are being fair to the term industry just because of the diversity. Also, when people say academia, they are only relating to a group leader or a professorship.
Yeah.
Academia can also be diverse role within the university, so people tend to often forget that. I mean, the role could be supportive in various ways. For example, my transition into industry essentially, it was a gradual process. It wasn't straightforward. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people coming from various well, having a common background, which was either master's or PhD in biology, but then moving into various backgrounds. I think that's where I tried to figure out essentially what is it that I enjoy listening to,
Okay.
if I could see myself doing that kind of, well, putting myself into those kind of shoes and still enjoy the work.
I see. So, let's move on to STEMPeers. Can you tell us a little bit about STEMPeers? When did you join it, and its spin-off, Euro STEMPeers?
Yeah. So STEMPeers, I actually very much like that organization, I must say.
Uh-huh.
It's just because of the wonderful people that we have there. I mean, it's an organization that has grown up very organically over last 5 years, over 5 years now.
Yes.
I've been associated with STEMPeers for almost 5 years.
Nice.
I joined the group 6 months after it had started.
Okay.
One of my friends, he's currently based in Basel working with Novartis. He, in fact, introduced me to the group. And I actually found it
Yeah.
very insightful in the beginning when I joined. It was overwhelming, or probably not too much at that point because of limited number of people back then. But it was very much insightful in terms of the knowledge people were willing to share,
Okay.
the kind of experiences that they were willing to share, the
Yes.
openness they had. I think it still is true as of today.
Okay.
And this is something that I think most of the people that you talk to on STEM peers are really.
Yes. Your voice.
Yeah, so I said if you talk to most of the people on STEM peers, they're really happy about those particular points I just made.
Okay. And what about Euro STEMPeers?
Eurostem Peers was essentially a small, you could call it a subsidiary of
Okay.
STEM Peers. It's the same organization. It's just that in Europe, there are different requirements for transitioning.
Yes.
There are different requirements for career growth and career understanding the career opportunities, which are very distinct from, let's say, what operates in the States or in Asia. So a few of us decided to essentially have that as an organization. It's still not registered yet. The plan going forward is to register it at some point,
Okay.
but still have it as a part of STEM peers.
I see.
We initiated that back in 2018.
Mhm.
In 2017, essentially after the first Boston STEM peers conference,
Okay.
there were three guys, Ramji and Nandan and Anzar. They were based in SciTech in Brno.
Okay.
They started essentially, they started with, if the STEM peers can have a conference in US, then why can't we have something similar in Europe?
Yes.
I think that was the reason why we started Euro STEM peers. We
Okay.
had a fantastic conference which was supported by SciTech. It's a central university that's funded, or at least at that point was funded by EU.
Okay.
They supported us heavily, and then we had the next set of Eurostempiers event in Berlin,
Yeah.
which was in 2019. We had a lot of collaborations and partners that came forward to support us, which was also giving us a lot of energy to work towards what we think is really essential at the end of the day.
Okay.
Last year, we were planning to have it in Heidelberg in 2020, but because of COVID, the plans dropped. But I think the entire team is really amazing who adapted really fast.
Okay.
And we still had the conference, a virtual one for the first time. There were some hiccups,
Yeah.
but we overcame that. So we are planning to have a similar one this year as well. Let's see how that goes.
That's very interesting. So this would be a virtual one as well this year.
This one will be the virtual one as well.
Okay.
We haven't decided the date exactly at the moment. We are currently working on those details, and
Yes.
it should come out in public soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about STEM peers, I would like to touch the point on science communication or communication in general.
Mhm.
So do you think, or what do you think, what's the importance of communication or science communication in general right now?
Let me start with the communication part. I think one needs to understand that in able to, as a scientist, especially when you're trying to put forward, let's say during your lab meetings or internal discussions, or even when you are going to a conference,
Yes.
you have to be able to communicate
Yeah.
what you're doing, especially in this particular context when you are still surrounded by a niche of people.
Yeah.
You need to communicate what you're doing in terms of science, and that's really essential. And this is something that happens on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, whatever the frequency of the talks might be.
Okay.
Uh, Taking this forward, science communication becomes essentially very important, which is when you are trying to communicate science to non-scientists.
Yes.
It's a challenge in itself. It's not an easy task, but I've come across a lot of people on STEM peers who are working on that domain, and they are doing a fantastic job there.
Okay. So what do you think we should do to improve science communication more?
I think one of the things that I see is a lot of people are approaching it in different ways, which is, I feel this is really essential because it somehow brings a diversity within itself,
Yeah.
which is important. What I don't see at the moment is somehow, or rather, there is
Hmm.
um, limited collaborations between different communication groups.
Yes.
So if they can, let's say, communicate and reach out to a greater public,
Yeah.
I think that would be fantastic. And
Okay.
this is a work in progress. It's not something that can be done overnight. Essentially, it's
Yeah.
a work in progress. It has to be done in a step-by-step manner. Also, one needs to understand that every scientific communicator would have a different vision.
Yes.
So I think you also need to understand if you'll find the right person who
Yeah.
has a similar vision.
Yes.
That is not an easy task. That's a challenging task.
Yes. So we can say that collaboration is a key here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And this is what we are doing with the addictive
Yes.
brain.
Yes, definitely. So, how has been your industry experience different from working in academics?
Different learnings, definitely different learnings. I mean, academia was a place where I had a lot of flexibility in terms of time,
Yes.
managing projects, conducting experiments,
Yeah.
uh, having a leisure of taking a break when I wanted, and so on and so forth. Which doesn't mean that industry does not provide that kind of luxury. It does, but
Yeah.
what's one of the major differences? Excuse me.
Yeah.
One of the major differences there is you're often answerable to the client or the management.
Yes.
And that's where you become a little bit of time bound.
Yeah.
So often, because I mean, one has to understand the goals are different. In academia, what you're generating is knowledge.
Yeah.
What you're doing is fundamental research, and research is something that takes time.
Yes.
It's not something that you sit on the desk one day, you have the experiment done with 100% success, and then the next day you have the result. It doesn't work that way. You tend to fail. You tend to go back to the lab the next day with the same, a different set of learnings.
Yes.
You try to improvise and so on. So there's flexibility of time,
Yeah.
not in every case, but in most of the cases.
Mhm.
In industry, there is limited flexibility there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the major differences.
Uh-huh.
Also, another difference which I find between academia and industry, and that's rather interesting, is the extent of collaborations that you have.
Yeah.
In academia, the collaborations are most likely with a similar set of people who have a similar background. For example, if you're working on a mouse model on a specific signaling pathway, you most likely are going to collaborate with, let's say, a person who has a technology, for example, mass spec or electron microscopy experience. And then you would try to answer the same question using their techniques, which is great. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yes.
Uh, in industry, it becomes slightly different. It runs at a different level altogether because, let's say, if a project has to be conducted, it's not only your team, it's not only your division, but you need to have collaborations or teamwork across the divisions.
Yes.
For example, if there's a drug that has to come into the market, it's not only research that's being done. There is advisory, there is a manufacturing process involved, there is quality control involved. So there are n number of processes, and they have to align uh, next to each other just to bring that product to the market at the end of the day. So two major differences between academia and industry. Both are fascinating. Both provide great sets of insight, but just differences, slight differences in the way they work.
Yes, definitely. Industry is more fast-paced as compared to academics. That is what I have
Yeah,
observed as well.
yeah. It's because the goals are different, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you approach your current role as a consultant?
That's actually a long story. That
Okay.
probably
So, maybe
no.
we can talk about it briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it short. So I did not. I had been interested in consulting for quite some time. It did not came up automatically overnight or over a period of a couple of weeks.
Yes.
During my postdoc, as I had mentioned earlier, I had decided that I'll venture out to explore different possibilities that I could continue in long term.
Yes.
So I got a chance within STEMPeers to work with two postdocs, Gaurav Jain and Radhika Raheja, both of them. We worked on a specific project which was given from a client.
Yeah.
And this was fascinating because we were asked to prepare a business plan for a startup.
Okay.
All three of us postdocs having our own challenges, but we did have support from a couple of people from STEM peers who were in diverse backgrounds. So we did get some support there, and we essentially delivered the project, raising the first round of funds for STEMPeers,
Okay.
which was a proud thing to do, I suppose. But what it helped was giving us some more insights into what the process, the business plan process is,
Okay.
right? And it also made me realize that this is something that excited me. This is what I felt throughout the project that lasted for a couple of months.
Yes.
Besides that, I was working at Charity, and there is an academic entrepreneurship program. It's called Spark Berlin. It's a part of the Spark Global program.
Yeah.
And there I was working with different set of people, especially with one of the managers, and she asked me if I could help her with some analysis. And we got together, we essentially worked together on a certain project. and that kind of excited me as well. So I could see the translation of science into something more concrete.
Okay.
I think this is what kind of excited me, narrowed down my choices to either consulting or venture capital,
Okay.
and that kind of waved my path. Another thing I must say that helped me understand more concretely
Yeah.
was my association with Medness.
Okay.
So this happened when Ananda was visiting Berlin for Eurostempiers that we organized in Berlin. And we were just talking about essentially professional development at different levels. And I told him that I was interested in something in that sort.
Okay.
And he said, why don't you join the Medness team? We are going to start from next week.
Yeah.
And you take the business section and cover the business section. I got involved in that. It was fun doing that for 8 months.
Mhm.
And then I left that because I moved into consulting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a nice story. Thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure.
So if someone wants to move into consulting, like out just out of his postdoc or PhD, what is the best advice that you can give to him or her?
So a couple of things. Consulting is something that a lot of PhDs and postdocs are interested in.
Yes.
And it's an exciting field, but what you need to have is good analytical mindset, good logical mindset.
Yes.
Often PhDs or postdocs do not realize that this is what
Yeah.
they have been doing every single day in the lab, analyzing their experiments, right? So
Yes.
they do analyze science in large data sets.
Yeah. Sorry.
This is something that is at the core on because at the end of the day, what happens is if the client presents you with a question, you
Yes.
have to come up with the optimal answer. The
Yes.
question is, can you do that?
Yeah.
Do you find that exciting? And if it does excite you, maybe a chance
Okay.
to try out at consulting for sure.
Okay.
There are a couple of things that one needs to keep in mind.
Yes.
Um, One is traveling associated with consulting. A lot of people are maybe not aware of this fact, but
Mhm.
often, especially when you're joining consulting firms,
Yeah.
you need to travel as per the demand of the project. And the travel can essentially be 80% as well.
Oh.
So you need to be ready to be able to travel. So
Yeah.
leave on Monday, come back Thursday, Friday, and then leave next Monday, come back Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it happens in every firm for every project, but
Yeah.
this is something to be kept in mind.
Okay. Yeah, I was not aware of travel related to consulting groups. So
It's quite often.
okay,
Yeah.
but it's never mentioned in the job descriptions that I read.
Yeah, I mean that's where essentially talking to a lot of people does help you gain more insight.
Yes.
This is
So
what I did during my postdoc, talk
okay.
to a lot of people,
Yes.
and that's where I learned the amount of travel that they
Okay. And so, what was the steepest learning curve that you faced when you moved out of academics to consulting?
One of the learnings was essentially, as I mentioned earlier, I was focused on neuroscience
Yes.
always for my master's, for my PhD, for my post. When I moved to consulting, I did start with one of the neuroscience projects,
Yeah.
but I quickly developed skills also to tackle cancer biology space, liver disease space, orphan disease space.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the amazing things about consulting is
Yes.
that you're not stuck to one specific in our case, since we are in biopharma industry itself, you're not limited to a specific disease, a specific therapeutic area, a specific modality, but what is interesting is you expand and you learn. It's all up to you how much you want to learn.
Okay.
There's no limitation to that, and that's the best part.
I see. So, what's the best advice that you can provide to students and postdocs who want to move out of academics?
Sorry, who want to know about?
Who wants to move out of academics?
Uh, that's a big one. Where shall I start? I'll keep it concise.
Okay. So maybe you can give your top 2 or 3 tips or
Yeah,
advices.
yeah. We'll focus on a few of them. I think that's really essential. I do talk to quite a lot of people who want to transition, and what I've realized is, which was also true for me when I was trying to explore.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges is understanding what you like, what excites you, what is it that you would enjoy doing at least for a couple of years, if not more.
Yeah.
I think introspection in that sense becomes really essential. You should ask yourself
Yes.
what you really enjoy. If it's science, you should stick to science. If it's business, you should move to business. If it's art,
Yeah.
science communication is great. If you like editing, being an editor is a great job.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, you as an individual have to come up with that answer. How you come up with that answer is multiple routes. One is you explore those opportunities. How can you explore those? Possibility of doing an internship. That could be one way of approaching it. Second is filtering out what you don't like, because then you narrow down on the space, right? Third is being able to network,
Mm-hmm.
being able to talk to a different set of people, just because you get so much details into those from those insights. It's
Yes.
amazing how much information they are willing to share. And that kind of those couple of things just pave your way into what kind of work you like doing.
Yes.
Would you enjoy more in sector A versus sector B versus sector C? So as you talk to more people, the more you network with people, you essentially start moving in that direction.
Yes.
Then you can focus on a couple of things rather than thousands of things that a PhD student can do.
Yes. Well, that was really insightful. Thank you. So, on a lighter note, what do you enjoy the most when you are not working?
Hmm. Quite a lot of things. Actually, these are the things that also excite me.
Yeah.
One is working with STEMPeers.
Yeah.
It's because of the kind of people that the group has. Then second thing that I enjoy is often I receive messages about possible discussions, so that it could be an interest in consulting or interest in different career opportunities.
Yes.
To look at the CVs, for example. And that's something I feel is also my responsibility, because I have been through that process that was difficult. If I can make it easier, just a little bit easier for someone, I would be more than willing to do that. Another thing that I enjoy is occasionally reading from time to time.
Yeah.
It's still lagging, I must say, but I do enjoy reading from time to time,
Okay.
catching up with friends, because that's really essential.
Yeah.
Besides all those things, I also enjoy just taking my camera and then walking on the street and clicking random pictures.
Those are
That's
like
fun.
really nice hobbies you have. Well, we thank you very much for your time today, and it was a pleasure speaking to you. Uh, and we look forward to interacting with you on STEM peers.
If you could just let us know a little bit about the different opportunities available in industry for people with a master's degree.
Yeah. So thank you, Jhanvi. I think it's an important question, because a lot of people uh, tend to move out, or rather not continue with PhD, which is perfectly fine, right after their masters, and then move into different sections of industry. One thing that you need to remember is that one can move into industry after master's degree, but these positions are going to be limited in some way or the other. There would be, and when I say limited, it would be in R&D in industry and not the overall industry. There are a lot of people, you are already a qualified scientist, essentially, if you have a master's degree, and that should not be underestimated.
Mhm.
You're not competing here with the hiring that happened for especially PhDs. So you do have a niche there. If you are planning to go to R&D in industry, the positions are mostly as, let's say, researcher or associate within the R&D. The growth there is going to be a bit limited because if you have a PhD, you have more in-depth knowledge of the field. So the growth there in the R&D division, and I'm talking only about the R&D division here, is going to be more vertical and faster as compared to if you have only masters. Nevertheless, if you are smart enough and if the company recognizes that, there are always different ways of growing in those kind of companies. Besides that, let's just have an overview of the other fields besides R&D in industry. A lot of companies do not necessarily need PhDs to survive, right? So those are the kind of positions that one can look into. They can be into consulting. A lot of big consulting firms wouldn't mind hiring masters. They are still raw in their approach, which essentially means they can be molded very well by the industry veterans. Unlike PhD, who are more rigid in their analytical methods. And the longer you stay in academia, essentially, the more academic mindset you have. This may or may not be favored by the industry depending on the position, the role, etc., or even the type of company for that matter. So I think what I'm trying to get here is that you need to find very specific niche areas where you can enter. In the beginning, I would just say take any role that comes to you that is also of interest. Once you are working on those roles, you will realize what are the growth opportunities within that industry, within that sector that you're working in, or also in possible horizontal sectors. You may not stay only in R&D after you transition into the R&D, because at some point you might just realize, oh, I am interested in the business development part. So why not, after a couple of years, I try to engage myself with groups who are working in business development. I think master's degree is sufficient there. You don't necessarily need a PhD there. So there are different ways of approaching this question.
And just a quick question. Would you have any advice about how to show in applications for these other kinds of jobs, like except for R&D, where you essentially don't have any experience? So how can you show recruiters that this is something that you can do? Because I mean, you're a gamble, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a very valid question and a very important one as well. The question whether you have done PhD or you have not done PhD, because this is what a lot of PhDs also face. How do you show to the recruiters that you have the capabilities? So I think no matter which level you are at, be it bachelor's, master's, PhD, postdoc, you have to show that you have something unique. How do you go about that? Essentially, there are different possible ways. One of them I mentioned is a possibility of internship. Reach out to different companies, reach out to HR managers or hiring managers to see if there is a possibility of internship in those companies. Because if you are able to do that for a couple of months, you already have some sort of experience and therefore an edge over your competitors there. But that's just one way. There are multiple ways that one can go around it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And
My
this was
pleasure.
great. So thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Jhanvi, for your question.
Okay, concrete question about cover letters. Like, how do you, when we are applying for industry, okay, there is a specific role, right? For example, program manager or something which they ask is PhD, but how do you write a cover letter for it? Like, apart from your experimental skills, what could you more I mean, which is not very valid for that position, how would you sketch your cover letter is my question.
Yeah. So I think it's a very, very essential question. What I mean, let's get back to the basics first to understand what is it that one should put in cover letter.
Yeah.
Because when you're applying to a company, they ask you for a CV and a cover letter.
Yeah.
So often what people tend to do, and that's probably a mistake, is have the information duplicated in your cover letter, what you already have in your CV. I mean, cover letter is something where you can express yourself as a person in case you are not able to do that in your CV. So I think there are little aspects that you can pull out from your CV, which are very much relevant to the job profile that you are applying for, and elaborate on that. Show how you are unique in your cover letter. Bring out characteristics. For example, what is it special about you that you think you are fit for this particular role? Besides that, I mean, there are different ways of communicating different aspects. For example, teamwork becomes really essential, which is often difficult to describe in a CV. I mean, the point that you can make in your CV is worked with a team and so on and so forth. But in cover letter, you can probably go a bit more granular in describing what essentially the teamwork there is.
Okay.
So I think there are different aspects that you can put in your cover letter, which are distinct but more elaborative from your CV.
Thank you, Sumita, for your question.